I told them all I did. And no, they didn't listen, they never listen. But now it got stronger, and it's still getting stronger. 2, 3, 4 stones. We don't even know, and it's continuing to learn. Oh yes, it's continuing to learn, and they didn't listen. Oh no. What are you doing? You didn't learn either. You didn't listen. No, you said it wouldn't happen. But no, it learned and it got stronger. And now it knows. Now it knows everything. Get your crazy ass out of my video. Alright. There. Much better. As you know, the Lee Sedol AlphaGo game series didn't quite go as some of us have predicted, and there are a lot of crazy people out there expressing some rather colorful opinions regarding the matches. I want to try to cut through the noise and bring a bit more of an objective look at the game series. I'm Dwyrin, and this is my review of Lee Sedol vs. AlphaGo. Alright, so I won't be going over Game 1 because I've already gone over Game 1 quite in-depth on my channel already. You can find the video easily enough and quite well reviewed, I think. Now, only thing I will mention about Game 1 is that, real quickly, for those of you who are unaware, Lee Sedol sat down in Game 1 with a plan. He had an opening specially prepared for the program to try to kind of get it out of its comfort zone. From there, it was a bit of a rocky start for the program. It chose to play a Joseki in an order that we are not used to seeing. That has been argued whether it was a good idea or a bad idea for the program. A fight ensued, the outcome of which Lee Sedol wound up getting 4th line territory and some pretty good thickness in the middle of the board that AlphaGo had no choice but to try and reduce. Now, at the time of the reduction, Lee Sedol was leading, and through the reduction, Lee Sedol decided to identify that there was a bit of a dragon in the center of the board. He entertained chances of killing it. Unfortunately, he should have tried reading that a couple of more times, because in the ensuing fight of trying to kill this large dragon, Lee Sedol not only gave up corner territory, he gave the territory over to his opponent, thus ruined his chances to kill a couple of white stones and revive his own stones, and from there the game went progressively worse. As you can imagine, you actually entertain the idea of killing a dragon, you don't kill a dragon, and in the end, and you know, through the ensuing attempt, not only do you not kill it, you give away your corner territory to your opponent, adding much to his score while decreasing your own. And to top matters off, you also don't get a large move on the board that you were probably also hoping to get in. That's really, really bad. Failing to kill a group in Gote is really, really bad. In fact, the entire world is agreeing that decision was really, really bad, and it's actually being equated to his ear-reddening move. If you're not sure what the ear-reddening move is, Google it, you can find it. Enjoy the story. That said, if you want to find out more about that game in detail, I do have it on my channel. You can go and view it there. I'm just going to bring it up so we are all on the same page when we're going into Game 2, because maybe from here we can better understand some of Lee Sedol's choices in Game 2 against AlphaGo. So, that being said, now we go into Game 2. And in Game 2, I thought we were going to see a much different strategy. I thought we were going to see maybe a bit more of a passive Lee Sedol, because, you know, he just failed at this. Or, simultaneously, and this is a weird thing to have, like, simultaneously in your head, I thought maybe you'd see a hyper-aggressive Lee Sedol, because he realized, like, ooh, he was, like, that close. Maybe if we just go after the thing's throat right from the off, then maybe we'll get good results. So I was kind of, like, not expecting him to play his normal game. I thought he would shift into a hyper-aggressive game or a really passive game to try to make up for the mistakes of Game 1. The interesting thing about human Go players is that they take their past results into consideration. They take their past experience against a specific player into consideration when formulating their strategy for what to do in the next game. So in Game 2, Lee Sedol was Black and AlphaGo was white. And as you can see here, AlphaGo opens up with quite an aggressive opening. He decides to throw down the low Chinese on top of the board after approaching twice. Now, arguably, this in the lower right is a little bit unusual. Typically speaking, when we look at these two stones, if we're going to play away, we stop playing here, because forcing this exchange and committing to a group is usually thought to be a little bit bad. Like, if we're going to play away, maybe we don't ever get an extension here, so we might as well keep ourselves a little bit lighter. That way, if this wants to be attacked, it's kind of hard to do. Like, we can attack here and take away its extension, but we can play pretty lightly if we want to in order to save our stones, and that's completely okay. If we want to, for example, go ahead and cut here as white, well, we can just back off, and that's not terrible either. Committing to a group usually means that at some point in the future, we're going to have to defend that group if we don't already give it a base. So many people looked at this and thought it was maybe a mistake by AlphaGo, but it's something that you can argue until you're blue in the face and die. Lee Sedol takes the large point here, looking to attack and approach the framework. This move here is very interesting from AlphaGo because he doesn't make a base to solidify his group, just plays over here. And the honesty of this move is quite interesting because it's saying, well, you know, if I want to, I can quite literally make an eye whenever I want. And I can still make a base. And maybe I can still even make some shape here. Now, I personally don't like this particular exchange by Black. I am not a fan of it. I'm not gonna, be doing it in my games where I'm just gonna poke here and then play away, because it feels a little bit dangerous because you can still get attacked, you can still get poked, yada yada yada. AlphaGo decided to play it and then go back and live in the corner, essentially putting the idea to Black, or to White rather, that now you kind of have to figure out how you're going to get all of your profit. Where is your profit going to come from? I stole your corner. I'm trying to make light shape here. I have a framework going on still. So it's going to be a bit of a tough game for White. It's going to be a bit of a tough game for White because we need to figure out how we're going to make this influence here be worthwhile. And it might be a little bit difficult to attack this because it can still make some shape. We have base being made from AlphaGo, and the game progresses as per usual. Now, like I mentioned, this isn't going to be a very in-depth game review. I'm just going to highlight the more interesting plays throughout the different games. This is one of them. Usually speaking, we aren't always inclined to kick here. In fact, 9 times out of 10 we'll tell people learning the game, don't kick against an approach. But here, Alpha just wants territory and is fine with giving Lee Sedol the right side, because as we can see here, primed to try to keep it low. Interesting choice though. In this game, we can see that AlphaGo is clearly okay with the idea of giving Lee Sedol 4th line territory, which is also something that we saw in the first game. Completely okay with the idea of giving Lee Sedol 4th line territory there as well. So that's an interesting decision. Now, Lee Sedol does not actually play this because it comes as a little bit of a difficult move to respond to. Because if you responded once, are you going to respond again? And again? How about now? Are you gonna fork over a wall here from Black? That can be kind of tough. So coming out instead is what he chose to do, as we can see here. AlphaGo approaches, and now we get into an interesting position in the game, and that is AlphaGo tries to save these 3 stones, which at first glance appears to be a bit of a mistake. Because as we can see here, this is a ladder, right? You can't save all of your stones, something has to give. If we, for example, played here, then we can ladder the stones, and that would be instant resignation. So instead of doing that, I said instead of doing that, thank you. There we go. AlphaGo plays this way. Lee Sedol gets to live his group immediately. And Alpha tries to make a little bit of influence. Now here's where the really important move, in my opinion, of the match comes along. And that is Lee Sedol defends. Okay, that makes sense. AlphaGo attacks. Okay. Lee Sedol defends. This isn't Sente, so Alpha takes a large point, and then this is played. Right here, I think this is such an important move of the game. Now, why is that? That is because each move, especially in the beginning of the game, needs a kind of a point value assigned to it. I don't want to get really clinical and tell you guys you have to calculate the value of your every move and keep a running score in the back of your head. You don't have to do that. But if you play somewhere, your move has to be pretty important. And this one is interesting, very, very interesting, because right now, Lee Sedol is alive. So why is he playing this move? What does this move say? This move says, you know what? I don't want to just be alive. I also want to be out. I want to be solid in this area. I want to remove the Aji in this area. And the reason why you would do that is because you are eyeing these stones as ones that you want to try and attack. That's an important decision. At some point in this game, because he played this move, we can now expect Lee Sedol to try to come out and attack these stones, put pressure on them. So the question is, does Lee Sedol get that attack in, given that he spent that move in order to have that option available to him? Now, missing that option would be enormous, especially when you find your opponent constantly taking, Sente and playing large moves, trying to take more territory, yada yada yada. You can't really fizzle on that attack. You can't really fizzle on playing a slow, solid move like that. Otherwise, the solid points that your opponent's getting to make, it's essentially just completely free. You were doing nothing. They were taking solid points. Can't let that happen. Your move has to be worth something. So the question then in the game is, does this do anything? Lee Sedol takes here, and then Alpha immediately fixes the minute it gets Sente, because it probably realized the same thing. Let's assume that this didn't happen. Okay? And Lee Sedol comes out. Well, for those of you who can't read it, we can't play this way because the entire group dies. So trying to cut through this is not going to happen. All we're going to have to do is run away. Right? That's all we can really do here, is just try to run this group. Now, at that point, you might say, that in itself would be bad because now you're putting more pressure on the bottom white group. But we're not, because we've already established that group is alive. Right? That group is alive. So at most, we're going to get a few points into here and some influence in the center. Now, why that's important is also coming up. Instead, took this, defended, immediately tried to do some kind of an attack. Not a whole lot you can do. With this extra stone in place, a lot of pressure is being applied here. Lee Sedol tries to lean, get into the middle again, and then has to invade. Why does Lee Sedol have to invade? Because Alpha took Sente and took those large points. So now look what we're looking at. We're looking at a board in which this area was made stronger. This area was made stronger. Our stone in the middle is a bit weaker, so it's not helping our invasion. If you contrast that with, I think I can do that. Can I take stones off the board with this program? Nope, doesn't look like I can. Okay. Well, if you can picture this previous idea, where we don't make this exchange, and we force this to run a bit, before we invade, we've got somewhere to run to. So this invasion turns a lot easier because we have friends nearby, and friends are good to have. Maybe we could even still make this exchange. I'm not sure. But it does make this a little bit easier, and we might even profit in the center with this stone that's now a little bit too close to thickness, and we still don't have to worry about anything like this occurring. Thank you. Because we still can't play this way as black. So this cut is still pretty well defended. Now if you contrast that to the actual game, where Lee Sedol gets this, and then the invasion, Alpha gets to lean over here, and without the extra stones, this is a very, very deep area to invade in. This is now Lee Sedol falling behind, because he made that exchange over here, and it didn't really yield anything. If we're making this exchange, we expect white to be stronger in the area now, and that just wasn't the case. So it seems that he missed an opportunity here. He responded a little bit too often on the right side, it would seem. Because without getting that in, this is extremely painful, and now trying to find something to attack is a little bit difficult. So he tries to live. As you can see here, very, very tight area. The Sente moves over here are certainly not helping matters at all either. Now there were a few variations that could have been played here. One, just to connect. Another is to try to get this in before doing so. Because if we can kind of force this exchange, then we're not going to lose the cut here. Instead, we have to give it up and try and escape, because if we connect, well, I mean, we're going to get pincer now. I mean, that's Gote, right? Pure Gote? So at that point, I mean, are we going to be able to get out of here? I don't know. So that, not the world's most successful invasion. Instead, he tries to keep pressure on this group. Doesn't quite do a whole lot. We managed to cut through, but AlphaGo manages to keep pressure on Lee Sedol quite well at this point in the game. Make sure he's not cut off from the middle. Has to connect up his groups. Very, very painful stuff. Very, very painful stuff. And sadly, at this point, Lee Sedol certainly has a lot cut out for him. Since the invasion didn't quite do it quite as much as perhaps he was hoping it would, he has to start thinking about the corner. When is he going to reduce that corner? When is he going to reduce that corner? Is he going to be able to get in a move down here and reduce some territory over there? Can he cut this off? Is there any like threats over there? There's so much that he has to contemplate, and unfortunately, one other interesting fact about this game is that he doesn't really have a lot of time in order to do these things. Because this game, he was a little bit worse at time management, and that's not where you really want to be against a bot that gets stronger the later it goes into the game. Later it goes into the game, fewer moves it has to read, stronger it gets. So, really early on, he was quite into Byo-Yomi. So not only does he have to juggle these things, he has to read out these things with like 60 seconds on his clock, and that's pretty much all he's going to get now. And that's a tough thing for anyone to do. Now, why he was using so much time in the early game, and how his time management slipped compared to the first game, when I think he still had something like 20-30 minutes on his clock when the game ended, I guess he decided either A, he was just going to take more of his time, make sure that he's not making the mistakes that he did in the first one, or maybe he's second-guessing himself. It's hard to say. As a human player, it's certainly possible that either are what was going on. That said, it seemed like Lee Sedol was able to manage his time enough to keep the game even. Regrettably, we got to a position. Where was that position? He did get the reduction on the bottom, which was nice. Black got territory here, which we expected. Managed to connect and go into the corner. Now, the timing of the corner is hotly debated. Some people say he should have gone and played the corner earlier rather than do the sequence in the center, that he was risking losing his chance to be able to do so. If you want a fully in-depth review of these games, I do recommend going over to Go Game Guru. I think Anyang Gil has some great commentary about this game. I thought it was quite in-depth, and you'll probably be interested in seeing what he had to say about the game. That said, one thing that really caught me by surprise was this here. Having to read out this sequence was actually quite amazing, because it seems like all of these stones are dead, which is a really huge shame. Interestingly enough, that's actually not the case. If white plays here, given that he has poked, for example, then we have a sequence like this. So if we exchange this first and then go back and connect, white has to do likewise, or black has to do likewise, right? Because we can't poke here because this is 2 liberties to 4 liberties, so that's straight up dead. So we have to play here, right? And at that point, whoops, alright, there we go. So at that point, we get to make this exchange in Sente, we get to make that exchange in Sente, and then that would wind up killing a lot of things. So I was really afraid that these ones were about to die, but there's really, really great sequence here to ensure that that actually can't happen, which I thought was amazing. Because that means this cut, a little bit strange maybe, a little bit strange. So knowing that's on the board, Lee Sedol takes the opportunity to go further into black's area, which I thought was great. He's setting up the sequence that we see here. Obviously, AlphaGo is not going to go through that entire sequence because that would be game ending. Instead, this just gets to connect. Here is where the trouble starts. This attachment over here leaves a very questionable shape that sadly Lee Sedol missed. When he connected and forced this to connect, we get into that move, which is almost a game-losing move. Almost a game-losing move. This is really, really huge. And Lee Sedol even, I think, mentioned that he was comfortable with his position up until this point. But this is just like worth, like, what, an extra 10 points that you can't. Look at that. That is painful. Suddenly losing all of that is not your friend. And it gets worse because this gets lost as well. So the loss of these stones is pretty big. But I have seen some commentary that has said rather than Lee Sedol going after these stones, he should have gone further here for a greater reduction. Even risk cope if necessary, to try to make up more of the points. And that when he didn't try to go that extra step, that was sadly when he lost the game. And shortly thereafter, after some endgame, white is enforced fact to resign, because he is trailing by a couple of points. Now game 3 is the really questionable game, because this one, I mean, you have to figure, if you're Lee Sedol, you have a fairly good idea that you should have been able to win game 1. You were leading. The time which you were leading, there was not a whole lot left that could be done. So you're fairly comfortable. You probably should have been able to win game 1. Game 2, not quite went as planned. You have a fairly good idea that you missed your attack, and you fell behind and just couldn't really do much. You're probably also, if you're honest with yourself, you're probably also aware that you didn't really use your time correctly. You entered into Byoyomi extremely early. So what are you going to do for game 3? What is going to be your strategy against the program? And his strategy against the program, this time taking black, this time taking black, is to set up a bit of a framework here. Okay, have a framework. This move I thought was interesting because I thought this was rather old Chinese style, taking a large knight. We don't usually see 4/4 large knights very often. So that just made me reminded of old Chinese games where they open up diagonal 4/4 points, and if they had enclosed, it was going to be with a large knight. If it was an approach, and they backed off, it was going to be with a large knight. So I thought this was kind of cool to see from AlphaGo. Wasn't sure if I liked it, but I thought it was cool. Framework goes up, AlphaGo immediately approaches, so Lee Sedol should probably be in the driving seat, and from what we know of the Chinese Fuseki, he should probably get a head locally in this result. Lee Sedol goes super aggressive, and then tries to fight. This seems overly aggressive to a lot of people, and if you are one of those people that thinks it's overly aggressive, you are quite correct. It is. Reason why he's attacking here is because he sat down at game 3 with an idea. And that idea is, well, AlphaGo backed off from possible ko in the first 2 games, so I'm going to just get a ko no matter what. That was his strategy in game 3. Pick a fight, get a ko, go nuts. And that wasn't really the best of decisions, because as you can see, he's picking a fight here for very questionable reasons. And the game gets immediately complicated. On the bright side, this appears to be getting surrounded. And the surroundings got to be pretty okay for black. This over here, though, seems to be maybe a bit much. Maybe he should have defended the left-hand side, because after black takes this move to try to further attack these white stones, we see this wonderful attack from white to attack the black stones, which you would imagine is going to happen after all. If we look at the black stones in question, and if we look at all of the white stones that are going to surround it, it stands to reason that there should be a pretty decent variation here for white. That many stones being involved in surrounding your stones, this probably should be a fairly okay variation for the person doing the surrounding, and that maybe those X stones needed an extra defense. So okay, he gets the fight that he was looking for, or a fight, any fight that he's looking for, and this is what it looks like. Very complicated, but doesn't seem like a ko is about to break out anytime soon. Now, for my own part, when I saw this occurring, I wondered if maybe black wasn't being a little bit too aggressive. I wondered what happens if he had just sought to contain this instead of keep fighting, keep separating, and go for that ko. Because it looks like this should have been a fairly reasonable variation, simply because there's not a whole lot you should be able to do here, right? As long as you're not careless in how you play, these stones should be able to connect up. I mean, white's going to be able to escape, but your stones should be fine, and you are making a bit of profit here and here, while white has yet to state, one, how this is going to live, because at the moment we do still have ways to make, whoops, not that, there we go. We still have ways to make this kind of looking for its eye shape still. Instead, he goes for the divide and conquer strategy, which results him into this particular situation where white is leaning against black, while black is clearly not able to make even a single eye just yet. We can picture this stone being taken, that stone being connected, and at that point, you don't have enough room anywhere in here to make eye shape. So, for my own part, I wondered if maybe this was a bit too aggressive in trying to keep coming out. That maybe you should have backed off and connected. Are there any other variations here? I mean, you can't do this, obviously. That's an Atari, that's an Atari. That would be no good. Yeah, not a whole lot of variation there, I don't think. Instead, we now have 2 weak groups. This move right here is a very interesting one in the entire game, though, because we have here, and we have this attempt to connect, which was ignored, right? This was ignored, instead making larger area. And black could connect up this way if black so choose. I mean, we can't really be denied connection here, so if connection was all that he wanted, he could have connected. But he's still going after that ko. That was the plan of attack all along. So he plays this one instead. Whoops, not that. Come on. Come on, where are you? There you go. Yeah, so he plays this one instead, which leaves possibility, for example, for this kind of thing actually occurring. Where maybe there's going to be some kind of a ko here. Instead, white never really goes after that particular ko, just goes to surround. We have a weak group running, so this is like the most basic you can ever get in a game where we've got a weak group running, so obviously one player is going to be able to profit. Of course, Lee Sedol is Lee Sedol. He doesn't go down without a fight. He tries to make a coat or make a ladder here, depending on how AlphaGo responds. We could easily get a ladder and go back into attacking the group that we wanted to get after in the first place. Instead, that doesn't happen. And from here, Lee Sedol is just trying to play catch up this area, and this is just way too big. There's not enough territory here. So Lee Sedol is just way behind at this point, and there's not a whole lot he can do. Now, his saving grace is that he did find all of the odds that there was on the board. He does try an invasion here because he knows he has to try something in order to be able to win the game. When AlphaGo responds here, though, nice and strong, rather than any kind of weird Hane or just some just some extension which would let him poke through, that was pretty much the end of his hopes and dreams, because there's not a whole lot of different ways to really make this shape work. Lee Sedol pokes at it for a while. He finally gets the code that he was working for so long, but unfortunately the program says that it can actually fight a ko, and Lee Sedol winds up losing the game. So it didn't quite work with the ko. Now, I want to reiterate that this game is very not like Lee Sedol. Yeah, he's aggressive, but his whole plan for this was just to try to find a ko, try to find a ko, try to find a ko. It's not usually how he approaches most games that you've seen clearly. So I think this, of the entire series, was the game that he showed he was being affected by the previous losses the most. Because if he approached it normally, I think, and as you're about to see, he would have still had a very good chance. If you throw everything out the window and say, okay, this is going to be the strategy, we're going after it, come hell or high water, very hard to win a game that way. And as we saw here, it was actually impossible to win a game that way. Now, that of course brings us to game 4. At this point, Lee Sedol is down 3-zip. Again, the back of his mind, maybe he's still thinking that he should have been able to win. We don't have any idea how he's going to play when he's going into game 4. Everyone thought, like, it was just, wrapped up. Nothing, no one can come back from that. I mean, this is going to be going down in history. And you're down 3-0. I mean, can you really play how you normally play in such a game? Because you have to think about things that you've been doing badly so far. You need to manage your time properly, don't try to be too aggressive, and if you formulate a huge, very, very specific plan, just to try to trick the thing and kill it, might not work. So what do you do at that point? And game 4 is a very interesting answer to this. Because game 4 begins off with Lee Sedol as white, and it opens up similar to how we saw the first game. Or not the first game, the second game, sorry. When it played that really weird Jiseki, and then backed off. And then its goal was to just, use Sente, take large points, and not have your groups be too weak. Instead, Lee Sedol changed his response here. See, he's also learning during these games. He realized if he plays here, the bot's going to go here, and unless you have a really good answer to it, then it's going to be hard to attack later on. Didn't go so well, so he changed his mind. He played the diagonal. And now the program decided to be a bit more honest and make a base for itself. Excellent. Now from here, we could back off and defend ourselves. But at that point, you're probably going to be facing the framework again. You can do a pincer, but that one stone is probably not going to die. It's going to be a bit difficult to actually take advantage of this. Instead, Lee Sedol just said, forget that noise, I'm going to approach and see what happens. I think this is the first time we got to see an approach on a 3/4 stone of the programs, right? I think so. So now we get to see what does the program do, what Chiseki does it choose. It chose 2-space high pincer, a favorite of many, many players. Lee Sedol changes direction, which I thought was kind of cool, putting pressure on here. This is starting to look like a more balanced game. A bit more even game, let's say. The program follows up by removing the odd, or not removing, lessening the Aji that is in E17. Now I want to note that it is not in fact gone. You can play the Hane still and sacrifice with the Atari. You can approach here and get out this stone. So because the stone was played does not mean that E17 can be written off. It's going to be still a valuable stone. So we defend corner. Takes an enclosure because it's trying to keep the game nice and even. At least it'll take an extension. And now we have this. We have this interesting choice. An attack here to see what we can do with this stone. Lee Sedol says, I'm going to divide and conquer. This area is the important one, so Alpha comes on out. Now, this is where I was worried that maybe Lee Sedol was playing a little bit too passively, because playing this, not playing the response to the shoulder hit, is really, really, really huge. I mean, not coming out here. But the only problem here is if we do that, we have to read out what happens in this variation. What happens when we get cut here? Are we still going to be okay? There's a lot of complication here, and I guess Lee Sedol decided he didn't want to be a part of that complication, so he just ignored it and killed off the stone. To be fair, this extra strength will allow us to invade the bottom later on, since we are nice and strong. Kinda makes sense. The Alpha follows up, plays the Hane. Everyone expected the cut and taking an aggressive posture. Instead, Lee Sedol backs off, and backs off, and backs off, and backs off. Not getting any of those cut points in. That seemed like a very odd decision from Lee Sedol, who's usually more aggressive. So now in the back of a lot of people's heads, we're thinking he's collapsed mentally, he's not playing like as aggressively as he normally does, and all this thing did was build a wall. So what's he going to do from here? From here he tries to reduce the top, because this area is very, very open, and we already mentioned that E17 has a lot left behind it. Attaches for strength, and tries to make a quick, flexible shape on the outset. This shoulder hit is quite nice. Basic idea, there's a weak group here, bam, we're going to shoulder this. We can try and connect up, but as you can see here, we're just denied, so not a lot we can do. All we can do here is kind of watch as well, either A, we do try to connect, and then this is made into potentially a large area, or we try to fight that too, and then we're locked out of here. Lee Sedol decides to play this and get potentially locked out, because he's taking a new idea for this game. He wants to give the program a lot, so it identifies that it's well ahead, and then go back and try to use that Aji and pull off something. So he's taking territory on the right, while the middle is seemingly given up. Lock out some of that Aji, kill some of those cut points, take their profit. This does likewise, and now we can try to reduce. So he gave black an area and put black on the defensive now. Black has to make sure that it gets enough profit here to warrant the fact that it played like all of these moves and gave up like all of these other stones, because if he doesn't, then he's going to be behind and it's going to be game over. So defends, because there's a small knight here, goes after the cutting points, keeps it separated. The Hane gets played, create another cut point, threatens to link up, which is nice, defends the cutting stone there. And this move right here, at this point everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people, especially on various Go servers, were already crying about how Lee Sedol had lost another game, because there's certainly a lot of territory here. However, he took a lot of time to find this one move. This one move is being hailed as like the divine move. This is the only move, and this is actually Lee Sedol said this after the game, that this is the only move that could be played on this board, which is very, very significant, because where Lee Sedol said this is the only move on the board that can be played for white, later on after the game, we were informed that AlphaGo said there was a 1 in 10,000 chance of this move being played. So that was an interesting difference, and the rest of this game is going to be filled with a lot of differences like that. So AlphaGo played here because we could Atari, but then there's more Aji, so we don't fall into that trap. We try to do a Liberty shortage. Alpha plays here. And now we have to be very, very careful, because right now on the board there's this, right? We can't attack it, but we can't do this either. We have to be very, very careful of this whole thing. But we don't want to give up the stones while we're doing it. So Lee Sedol plays this way to kill off the stones. Now he's fine. AlphaGo gets to take, and it seems like he's in trouble again. However, with this Hane threatening to connect, if this gets connected, that gets Atari, we're in a lot of trouble, because those 3 stones are then going to die. I mean, no matter how you play this, that's dead. No matter how you play this, that's also dead. Yada, 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 yada. So instead of that, sorry about the variation, when Lee Sedol plays here, AlphaGo makes a very odd decision to drop down to the second line with a group that's clearly not alive anymore. So it's calculating its territory right now, and it's not liking what it's finding. So it's trying to optimize the chances of getting back into the game, and one of the moves that it decides upon is this one. Maximize liberties, maybe we can attack this. Lee Sedol takes, no more Aji there, those are still dead. Poke at this, maybe we can capture it, but not really. So we just reduce that. Throws in. At this point, it's fair to say that the program is becoming unhinged. It doesn't like what it's reading here, and it's trying to find a move that can bring it back into an even state. So it's going here, it's threatening the cut, because if these stones die, it obviously works. If there's a wrong answer here, then we can take away the corner. That would obviously work. Instead, it just kind of fed Lee Sedol another move. Removing a liberty, descending to the first line. That is just not a good play. This bot at this point, or this program, sorry, at this point, as clearly losing its marbles. It cannot find a move. I want to say this again. It cannot find a move right now to go back to its master programming, make the game even, which I think is a really amazing look. An amazing look at this thing's programming, because how it was able to get so strong at Go is because from an even game, it's programmed to keep the game even. Play the variation, play the move that keeps the game even to maximize its chances of winning. So this game, whoops, sorry, that was not nice. This game, I think, is very, very interesting, because a lot of people have been saying, like, oh my god, like, how many stones stronger is AlphaGo than Lee Sedol? And we actually have a definitive answer with this game, and that is 0. It couldn't do handicap if this is how it responds when it's behind. Because think about it. If we can I pass? How do I pass? Just play here. Like, let's say we have 2 stones, right? And we say, okay, AlphaGo, you're up now. You need to make the game even. There's no move on this board that makes the game even. Black's points are higher than white's, and there's no move that white has, especially without Comey, that you can make the game even. But maybe you can get it to make a move. And black plays another move. There's still no move to make it even. And maybe we play a Joseki. This is by definition an even result. So there's still no move that can make it even, that can make it an even game. So the question is, how can the program handle it if there is no move on the board that can make an even game? And now I think we found the first hints of that answer. It would be broken. I think if you try, this is just completely a guess on my opinion, or on my part, that if you were to have the program give handicap, it would be looking for things it could not find, and it would melt, kind of like we're seeing here. It's looking for a way to maximize its chances of making the game even again, and it can't do it. So that the moves that it chooses are the ones that have almost no chance of working, like descending to the first line, trying to cut the 1-point jump, that clearly aren't going to work. So it would seem that this is a really great answer to those people who are saying, maybe it could give, Lee Sedol 2, 3, or 4 stones, like handicap, or like all pros, like every human or whatever. And it seems like the answer to that is no, it really can't, for the reasons that we're seeing in this game. So I love that this game was played for the sole reason that we got an answer to that question. So continuing on, obviously that's not going to do anything. It's just kind of adding to the stones that are now dead. Tries to salvage as much as possible, allowing the connection over here. Now we could try and cut here. A little bit dangerous though, because we're looking at this if we do, right? And now getting surrounded, or we're now surrounding these stones. So even if we do cut, this is still very, very dangerous for black. Not to mention, you have to consider the Aji here can still very well exist if we get to play this move. Right? If we get a nice strong wall here, not only do we harass these stones, but we're going to be able to harass the base down here now as well, to add into the territory that we're getting in the corners and sides. So this would still be a very, very painful variation to have to explore. So we get the forcing move on in here, forcing move on in here. Black gets to be attacked now on the left-hand side, and for a large portion of the game now, it's going to be black trying to find anything that can bring it back, while white just keeps maximizing his advantage. And before too long, black even gives up and resigns, making for Lee's first win of this particular series. At this point, I have a confession. Lee Sedol now finally has his first win. And I'm sure many of you are probably thinking I was hoping and praying for him to get his second win in Game 5, but honestly, I was hoping he'd lose. I know, that's bad. That's really, really bad. Allow me to defend myself. I was hoping he'd lose Game 5 because of Game 1. There'd be a little bit of a controversy if he wins Game 5, because if he goes 3-2 or 2-3, sorry, against AlphaGo, in light of the fact that Game 1 should have been his, then you'd be able to legitimately say that maybe the bot hasn't quite, or the program, sorry, hasn't really surpassed Lee Sedol yet, especially in light of the fact that it was trailing up until Lee Sedol's huge mistake. So in order to avoid that, in order to avoid controversy and people arguing and bickering for decades to come, I kind of wanted Lee Sedol to lose. To be completely fair, I was kind of like, maybe it would be better if he doesn't win this next game. And thus we bring ourselves to Game 5. So we bring ourselves to Game 5 with, once again, Lee Sedol taking black against AlphaGo as white. Apparently he actually wanted AlphaGo to be white because he thought that the program did better when it was white. Interesting. Lee Sedol opens orthodox. Program has to approach. We attach. Now we're curious to see what is he going to do. Again, my confession, I was hoping and praying to see p4. I wanted to see if this thing was just playing this move to eliminate variations or if it was playing it for a global reason. Instead, it attached here for a rather modern variation, which I thought was pretty cool. We're playing modern Joseki. However, to be modern Joseki, we would also have to fall back with an extension at this point and not do the turn. The turn here is regarded a little bit slow by some people, as evidenced by the fact that black immediately attacks this position. Again, it's the whole situation of order mattering. Like, normally we would not commit to this and then we would attach. Committing here and then doing this says, you make one slow move and I'm going to pincer you because you're invested in this group, and now you're invested in this group. So if I can separate you, I'm freaking going to do it. And sure enough, we see like one arguably slow move, and Lee Sedol says, no, you don't. You invested, you defend yourself. So alright, we're seeing an aggressive game. Alpha continues with the Atari. Black extends because he's on the attack, and the corner is completely alive. AlphaGo plays the Hane, and we see a cut. So now it looks like these stones are going to be dead because you could run these out, but it's you run this out, you lose. It really is that simple. If you try to run this out right now, the amount of strength your opponent's going to have, considering he can connect, he can Atari, this is still not alive, is just enormous. And I mention that simply because I was asked while this game was going on by someone who will remain nameless, can't white escape now? And the answer to that is no, not really. If you run it, then you're bad. I'm sorry, but if you run it, you're bad. And the reason why you're bad is because you have to work on your whole board positional analysis and realize, even though I can live, what's the cost of me living? So we cut here. We don't see this. There we go. Goes for a surround. Connects up underneath. So this is a pretty big corner that was just given away. However, expected now is 017 to try to make this as large as what we gave away over here. Instead, Alpha goes into reduction mode, taking the large enclosure again off of a 4/4 stone. Now, at this point, I was a bit confused because now it looks like it's being programmed, or its base programming was off of like old Chinese games and not the amateur set off of KGS that it was originally taken from. But alright, it likes 4/4 large knights. Okay. Black approaches. This move is very interesting in game 5, because if we play here, then we give more influence, and considering that white still has this, that's a lot of influence. That's a lot of influence to be given away. So black says, nope, no influence for you, I'm going to attach, and then come out. The cut here is normal, we use it to settle. This is a good emergency variation for you if you find yourself going into the corner and then thinking to yourself after the attachment, or after the pincer here, like, maybe that was a bad idea, I don't want him getting influence here, is there anything I can do? You can attach and just settle. Now you could say, but what happens if my opponent doesn't do that? What if he plays here? Well, 3/3 is open. The 3/3 is open and you can be fine. So from here, Lee Sedol is leading. It's a slight lead, but it is in fact lead. This opening wasn't going too well, and we have yet to see 017 from white. So right now, this is not equal to this. The corner is open, and in fact it's really dangerous too. Because if you look at, let's say, any kind of normal Joseki here, any normal cornered sequence, these 3 stones are a hindrance. They're a liability. They're going to just have to run away. And at that point, it's going to be tough building. So we can't just say, oh, it's okay, black got this because, white's getting all of this. That's not true. the attachment actually really, really hurts. White needs this move in, needs some kind of defense on the left-hand side. But at the same time, you can't just take it and say, okay, I'm going to take this, and by the way, black, take whatever you want to take as well. So we try to limit what black can take. And then we see another interesting position from white, and that is the fact that it can't read this Tsuji that everybody else can. Every amateur is expected to be able to read this, but it looks like AlphaGo might be seeing this one for the first time. You can see we can drop down here, there's an Atari, but it goes nowhere. And make no mistake, this sequence is bad, because all of these moves could have been anything. They could have been co-threats. Maybe as a board gets complicated later, maybe they do work. You don't want to play this sequence right now. It's just not good. So that actually tells me two things. One, it will play out a sequence that doesn't work, which is interesting. And two, it really has to read out everything. It doesn't just, like, know a sequence like humans know a sequence. Like, a human will not look at this and be like, oh, right, yeah, tombstone, got it. We're good. We can't play this because it just all gets captured. Like, you don't have to read out the exact sequence right now, but, you know, yeah, I got enough liberties over here. This will be fine. This will be fine. But the program kind of has to read it out, and it apparently didn't read it out correctly, because this was not a good exchange. It does find the attachment move, though. It does find the attachment move in order to build, as we can see here. Now, at this point, everyone's actually still expecting black to win this game, and I was expecting controversy to arise as a result, because we're seeing the game not going in the way white really wanted it to. We're seeing it make mistakes on the right side of the board. Black's got a bunch of territory and no weak groups. All he has to do is just kind of hopefully not lose Sente at the wrong minute and just reduce. So we see reduction, the shoulder hit. Very, very obvious move. We wouldn't want to just be like, okay, I'm going to play here. I think that's a good move, hopefully. I mean, that might just give, fifth line territory away at best. At worst, it's going to fall under attack. So we go for the Sente. And, shoulder hit's pretty Sente. Lee Sedol just goes and lives. This is argued as a bit of a slow move, and he should have kept going, because the chances of this dying is extremely slim, not with the shape it already has. But this is a move that Lee says, you know what, I'm comfortably ahead, I'm just going to live and be okay. This is a move that says maybe those previous games aren't completely out of his head. Maybe they aren't completely out of his head, because we could easily play this way. There's even still a bit of a gap here. We can still live. We have Sente we can reduce. I mean, it's a shame. Instead he gets to play this, which, okay, we're still going to be okay. We're still going to be okay, but we're living really, really tiny, and that's regrettable. So Lee Sedol comes up from the bottom to try to reduce. This isn't dead, as we can see here. Either that or that, whatever you want to play. This is obviously alive. This move couldn't be any more obvious if it tried. It's looking to try to, disrupt this while getting rid of. Had to be careful. We want to reduce this a little bit, but we don't want to lose our move here. So we see further reductions taking place. The result of that, though, is we do lose the left-hand side. For my part, I wonder what would have happened if he had tackled the left-hand side a little bit earlier, before he killed off those two stones, and pressure could still be applied here. But, I don't know. This is the most interesting thing of the game, though. This move here says I'm going to get tricky and try and attack these two stones. We could try and do this, for example. We could turn this into something like this, where you're doing a lot of damage on the corner, and you're guaranteed to know the results of this. Instead, we don't see that, or we can play, this way. Danger here, of course, is there's potential to be killed, but there's a lot of outside Aji here. I'm sure black could find something agreeable. So instead he plays here, and then attaches to try and isolate the two stones, which admittedly he does, but this move here is so painful because not having life in the corner, he's forced to make life along the bottom, and now you can see here our shape is getting poked at. And this is sadly where Lee Sedol starts to fall behind, because this was Gote, and now he's White's profiting again, and that's painful. This move is also one that I think was a bit of a mistake for black. I think the move that he should have played was here, because if he squeezes, White has to back off, right? We can't play this way, because what are we going to do? I mean, that's just no, right? We have to play here now, I guess, and then do something like this, right? And now the problem here is we're under attack. This whole area here is under attack. I mean, we have to defend the cut point. But if we defend that cut point, that's open. If we defend that, this is now open. This is really tough. This would have been a very tough variation for White. And there's not a lot of ways to counter it. I mean, we can play here and then connect. But even then, there's still Aji. Even then, there's still Aji left, right? Because there's Aji from here. We can use this to escape or go deeper inside. So there's a lot of tricky Aji here, but with this variation, there's a little bit less, and that was unfortunate. As we can see here, this was all taken care of. Now it's hard to find the Aji that's over in here anymore because we didn't do that variation. So black is trying to reduce, but it's tough. It's a little bit tough. In the end, he tries to exchange this for further reduction into the middle. That's a bit of a huge loss, but the game is still fairly close. Unfortunately, it's not able to get any closer, and so after a couple of moves, White has no choice being behind but to go to the end of the game, where he is in fact still behind by a couple of points. So this game, Lee Sedol was ahead in the early game. He was in a pretty good position in the mid game. I think he missed a few things in the middle of the board, though. I think he did miss a couple of things. There was Aji there that he kind of backed off from. Up top he kind of backed off, and down here he kind of backed off. So I think he thought that he was going to be okay, and so he could do that. Regrettably, not the case. Now, as I've mentioned, if you want more in-depth reviews of this, I will link down in the description. You can probably get better, more detailed reviews there. For my part, there's only a couple of things that I want to say outside of these games, and that one of the greatest things that we've learned from this game, this game series, I think, in my opinion, is that I think we're playing too fast. Because one of the big problems that we saw in this game is the idea of Lee Sedol being low on time. Because the program is able to read perfect endgame in the space of Byoyomi. A human has to get endgame perfect in 60 seconds if he's in Byoyomi, and that's really, really tough to do. So much so that I think if you're a human player going into endgame while in Byoyomi, you're probably going to lose to the program because it's just reading faster than you. I mean, even if you're a pro, you know you can absolutely read out endgame to its conclusion. You know how the game is supposed to end. The score really shouldn't shift back and forth. There's really only one path you can take in endgame. Every pro, being a pro, can find that path, especially at like the 9-dan level when you're dealing with like the top 20 players in the entire world. But is 60 seconds really enough time to find that? That became the question, because we did see some slips from Lee Sedol due to time pressure. So for me, I began wondering, maybe not going back to, the old Japanese time settings where, games took, multiple days. But for a game to be even and remain even, I think a little bit more time is needed, because everyone was agreeing the longer the game, progressed, the greater the disadvantage that Lee Sedol was at, because the fewer variations that the program had to read, the more accurate its read's going to be. Although a human can keep up with that, it needs more time to keep up with that. So for that reason, everyone was, people that I was talking to anyway, because I was reviewing this with some amateur dons while it was being played, is one thing that we were talking about was Lee Sedol has to be significantly ahead before it reaches that late game. Otherwise, it's a good chance he might lose, because he might make a mistake in endgame. And that didn't seem entirely fair. So maybe in our quest to make games more entertaining, certainly for video, for those observers, maybe we've taken too much time out of Go, and we only have ourselves to blame that we now make these kind of mistakes, that we overlook these kinds of things in our own play, because we haven't given ourselves enough time to do anything else. I mean, you're capable of it. The pros are anyway. But only if they have enough time. I'd like to know your thoughts too. If you agree or disagree, do let me know in the comments down below. I'm kind of curious to know where your thoughts on that are. I thought Lee Sedol played very good games. I kind of disagree with the idea that the bots have surpassed us. We've seen that the program surpassed us, because we've seen enough instances where it made flat out mistakes, instances where Lee Sedol was leading enough. He wasn't really manhandled until game 3, when he had that crazy idea to just go bonkers and try to force a KO wherever he can, and that just got shut down. But in game 1, he did really well. Game 4, he did really well. Game 5, as we see here, again, absolutely excellent. It's definitely very, very strong. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's not. It's absolutely a strong program. And it's definitely taught everyone that it won't let you close out a game. It'll try everything, as we saw in game 4. It will run stones to the edge of the board if necessary to try to maximize its chance of winning. It'll try anything and everything in order to win that game. And that right there is something that pros can definitely learn from. I'm not too fond of its opening, though. I didn't agree with its opening in this one. I thought I like Lee Sedol's result, especially in the bottom right-hand corner, getting that really large, that really large corner. Didn't really like it in the first 2 games. I wasn't really a fan of the whole making the tiger's mouth and then just leaving it. Not a fan of it here, making the tiger's mouth and then playing elsewhere and leaving it. That I don't think opening theory is where it can really help. It seems to still be struggling with some ideas in opening theory. Its endgame, though, is really good. Its reading is really good. It can definitely not lose sight of what's important during a fight, because it's always evaluating and reevaluating and reevaluating what what the vital points are. And that's really good. That's really good. It's definitely a huge step up for AI. Anyone in the AI field must be absolutely thrilled to death with the leaps and bounds this program has made, to the point where it's even with some of the top players in the world. That's really, really impressive. That said, there are a few things that I wasn't quite fond of in this particular series. It really rubs me the wrong way that time became like such an important factor. If you're trying to, put, your best go forward, especially against something like this, that can read just thousands and thousands of variations during the game, I would like for the player to be able to concentrate on the game and not have to worry so much about the clock. That really had me a little bit, I won't say not enjoying, but it did take away a little bit from the games, and I'm very surprised that that actually had to become an issue. I certainly thought that, Lee Sedol would sweep it, and, time wouldn't even be an issue, but it definitely did turn out to be one. And I certainly hope that's talked about, or at least given some consideration in the future. The mental aspect, the pressure Lee Sedol was being put through, I thought was also a very fascinating part of this particular series, and highlighted one of the large differences between, a program playing and a human playing, and that is feel things, and that kind of gets reflected in our play. It made me go back and start thinking about the nickname that Go has, Hand Talk. You can usually, tell, is your opponent confident? Is your opponent worrying? Is your opponent, not feeling well that day? Like a whole bunch of different things come out through your play, whether you like it or not. And someone, especially if they play you regularly, will be able to know, what you're feeling and when you were feeling it, like if you were distracted, what you were thinking about, during the course of the game, because your moves are saying something, and as humans, sometimes that has an emotional value. And it was very, very weird to see a program that obviously feels none of those things. You can infer none of those things. That was a very strange, very, very strange moment. And Lisa even commented on it during the series. Like, he usually has some sort of sense of his opponent on, of what's going on based on their reactions, because it's not like poker. You do have, written on your face, like your well-being, your state of mind, that kind of thing. So this was kind of a brand new thing for him, like sitting down across from something that was giving him none of those reads. So in some respects, although he was playing Go, he was playing a bit of a different game for the very first time. Take that back. Until he played Game 4, and then he saw that it has multiple personalities, and one of those personalities is completely insane. So until then, I'm sure it was a very, very different experience for him. People have already been wondering, how this is going to change Go. Are people going to play more like AlphaGo now as a result? My initial opinion is I hope that's not the case, because I rather like how humans play Go. I rather find fascinating the whole concept behind hand talk. I like that players can be aggressive, sometimes too aggressive, and get into crazy fights that are in fact risky, that are very uncertain, like uncharted territory. I like that players sometimes go out of their way to try new things that obviously, contrary to AlphaGo's programming, might not have a high chance of succeeding, especially if it's the first time it's being played. I like that Lee Sedol was able to find a move that only had a 1 in 10,000 chance of being played, and was thus completely ignored by the program, because it makes me wonder, what other moves have been played in games that have been absolutely just thrills to watch and enjoy and learn from. that, again, the program would never have seen, never would have contemplated, never would have assumed were going to be played, all of those things that are still, apparently still so unique to human play. I love players like Shibano Torimaru, for example, who has this crazy influential style of play as a young player, who is just willing to give up crazy groups for influence in the hope that, that carries them through. Ideas that would be quite suspect if you were just going and evaluating the game by statistical probability of a move being able to succeed or not. So for my part, I would rather not have humans play like computers, because I think that takes away something really important in the game. I don't know, its soul, if you will. That for its part, I would argue that Go is probably not a game of just soul calculation, that there really is soul and character involved on the board, especially with some of these players like Lee Sedol, who, as we saw in Game 1, is willing to go out on a limb and try to fight and kill anything. Shibano, who I mentioned, who is just crazy after influence. I mean, if it were soul calculation, would you have a player like Go Sagan try to innovate and go after, moves like Tengen, opening up in that style? So yeah, I hope we don't move to an era of, raw calculation, because that'd be a bit of a bummer, I think. I think that'd be a bit of a bummer. But for my part, I did enjoy the series. I hope you enjoy them as well. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. If you liked the video, remember to like it, or dislike it if you did not like said video. Once again, comments will be, or not comments, but the description will be where you can find a greater in-depth review of these 4 games if you are interested. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.